Hey, I recently completed the 3-day Tony Robbins Time to Rise Summit, and I wanted to share with you some of my learnings. Firstly, Tony talks about how so much of our self and our identity are really just made up of patterns and stories, either that we have adopted and those that we keep repeating and telling ourselves. Now, that could be our interpretation of a particular event or trauma that's happened in our life. It could be the habits that we form, whether that be out of protecting ourselves or for whatever other reason it might be. And the great thing about Tony is he shares with you that you can strip away those layers. Basically, they're simply layers like an onion that have built up over your core self, that authentic you. And all the patterns and the stories and the habits, they've just layered up on top of who you are at your root, really. And so if they've built up, then the great news is that we can strip them away, right? Something Tony shared that I found really empowering was that our identity, or what you believe about yourself or who you are, is really the controlling force for your life. And I've come to realize in recent years that many of the beliefs we hold about ourselves are false beliefs. They're ones we've either adopted from other people, or they are that story that we have taken from an earlier point in our lives and kept repeating. So that has become the story that we relate to, and we start to believe that is who we are. So working with your beliefs is such a crucial tool in transforming your life. Looking at those limiting beliefs that you might have. It's not always getting to the bottom of where it came from. That can be helpful, definitely. But it's rewriting your story. Not changing what happened in the past, but changing what you took away from that situation. And it's such a powerful tool to have in your toolbox. And another thing with beliefs is that what we believe, whether it be about ourselves or others, the world around us, we start to notice that. So if we are thinking, everybody's unkind, nobody loves me, that's what we start noticing in the world. We notice the people that didn't hold the door open for us or didn't let us out in the traffic. It's one of my big bugbears. But whereas if we go out thinking that there is so much love and kindness in the world, you'll start to notice that more around you. It's, like I think I've used this example before, but when you buy a particular car, you start seeing it everywhere, because that's what we're programming our minds to do. What we think about and what we believe is what we start to notice more of. So if we can bring the positives and the things that we want in our lives, if we can think about those more, then that's what we will start to notice. And again, it takes practice, but a simple tool that you can start to implement to change your life. Another really interesting experience during the summit was using archetypes, which was something I knew a little bit about before the summit and had done a few meditations, but Tony repeats the process quite often, as the more you connect with those archetypes, the more they'll come to you and the more support and advice they will provide you. So basically, what they are is you take yourself through different, personalities. I suppose we're all made up of lots of different personalities anyway, but this is very specific. So the first one that Tony always goes into is the warrior. They're the ones that, let's get this shit done. They're fierce, they're committed. And Tony takes you through the process of embodying that warrior archetype within yourself. So you choose a location where you feel that warrior. For me, it's sort of always in that solar plexus area, I suppose, where I feel like a lot of my strength comes from. And then you attach a color to it. Then you got to get out your comfort zone. Tony Robbins is big about getting out of your comfort zone because that's where great things happen. You attach a noise to it. So you choose the noise that your warrior makes, and that might be a roar. Mine was more of like a growl, because I feel that's a noise that I don't make very often, but it's that warning to other people that I have been unleashed. So that was how I embodied my warrior. But what you can also do is, when you are embodying that inner warrior, is ask them about a specific situation or decision you're trying to make. What is it that the warrior would like you to focus on? What is your inner warrior trying to pass on to you? So you start to, and you speak this aloud, because we have this inner wisdom in our voice, and a lot of the time we do our thinking and brainstorming in our minds. But if we use our voice, we actually can get amazing insight that we never expected, because the voice has its own wisdom, which I love the concept of that. You know, you always think it's something you control, but if you go with the flow and embrace these practices, actually sometimes things can come out of your mouth that you were unaware of, and you think, oh, where did that come from? So really, really great experience. And then he takes you through the process for the magician. So they're the ones that can change things with, you know, a click of their fingers or a wave of the wand. They're the magic makers. They can transform things in a heartbeat. So again, find the location in the body, color, a sound or a voice, and then you ask them the question that you want to ask them, that you need support and advice with. Then's the lover, and you go through the same process. And that lover is, you know, that sense of connection, that self-love that you have for yourself, not always about the external side of things, but that self-love, that reassuring comfort that we have within ourselves, that hopefully we're building up, because that can take time. And again, you go through the process of asking the lover within you, what advice would they give you for that specific scenario or situation. And then finally, it's your sovereign, your king or your queen. I like to use queen because I like to think I'm a bit of a queen in my household. And you go through exactly the same process, but this is their sort of greater good. You know, you're looking after the community around you. It's that protective, not the warrior, fierce warrior, but it's that more, how can I serve other people for the greater good, basically. So there's lots and lots of meditations out there online, or I'm sure you can find something from Tony as well to take you through that process. But it takes a few goes through to sort of just get over the awkwardness, and I would suggest doing it in a nice quiet space without anyone around to begin with, so that you can embrace it more. It's really hard when you know your kids or your partner's in the background and you can't roar if you want to roar, and whatever other noises you want to make. So, but stick with it. It takes practice, but it's almost like your spirit guides, but these are within you. These are all your inner self. They're just different aspects of you, and they all have a different outlook and perspective on things. So you can get a really full-bodied support system by connecting with these archetypes and listening to what they say. Another amazing skill that Tony teaches is how to change your state. So obviously, when you think about how we interpret situations and moments in our lives, that can really be highly dependent on the state that we are currently in. If we're feeling a bit crap and down and that the world is against us, then that is what we will see, okay? Whereas if we are in that heightened state where we are unstoppable, indestructible, then that's what we will take from situations instead. We'll use it as a learning opportunity, a growth opportunity. And the great thing with state is that it's actually pretty easy and straightforward. It's a very practical strategy that you can use at any time. What it involves is, one of the main things is actually your physiology. So move your body. It could be that you notice you're sitting in that slouched, curled up, protective, sort of fetal position almost. And that will quite often lower our mood. It's, whenever you think of somebody who is depressed or lacks confidence, that is the image that you get. The shoulders are slumped, the back is rounded, the head might be dipped, might be talking in maybe a very quiet or monotone manner, like that zest isn't there, that enthusiasm and passion. So one of the best things you can do is change your physical positioning. Sit up nice and tall, stand up nice and tall, get the shoulders drawing back, get that chin up. It's quite amazing. Even that alone will change how you're feeling quite often. Tony even speaks about how standing in a superhero pose, which I love because I'm a big Marvel fan, can affect your mood in only 2 minutes. Now this seems insane to me, but I've done it and it's true. It can increase your testosterone, being male or female, but at the same time it actually relaxes you, so you get this awesome chemistry, I suppose, of having that testosterone surge of being powerful and unstoppable, but also in a calm state. Like your heart's not racing, you're not in that stress response in that powerful mode. You're in a controlled, calm, mindful state, but you're fierce at the same time. So that's really, really a simple trick that you can do. Stand there in your superhero pose, picture that cape on your back, and stay there for 2 minutes and see how you go. Also, with changing your state, you need to think about where your focus is. So if you are dwelling on the negatives, that's what you'll keep seeing more of, right? Whatever we think about is what we notice more of. So it's not to say that we ignore those problems that we encounter, but we try and see what learning is there, what growth is there. Even in the worst of situations, there is opportunity for learning and growth. So shifting your focus is another part of changing your state. And then finally, language. So thinking about what language you are using. A lot of the time that is about ourselves. I find I probably use more negative language about myself, especially in the past, than I do about other people. Although the more negative you are about yourself, quite often the more negative you are about other people. So if you find yourself criticizing other people quite regularly, then that might mean that you are criticizing yourself quite a bit too. So changing the language that you are using and using those affirmations, or as Tony likes to say, those incantations, where you're not just saying, I am enough. You are, I am enough. You're using your body. You're using your voice. You embody that affirmation, which then turns it into an incantation. You are embodying it and willing it into life. So those are the 3 parts of changing your state. And as I said, really, really simple and quite a quick way of shifting your mood, shifting where your focus is. But it does take practice. So keep working at it. Don't be afraid if you try it a couple of times and it doesn't work. But I'd love to hear how you get on with that. There was one section in the summit, and this wasn't so much a learning, but more of a validation for me. Tony spoke about the Small, Small World ride at Disney and how that song gets into your psyche. I've been to Disney a few times when my kids were much, much smaller, and I won't say I hated the ride because that's a pretty strong word, but it tormented me at some level. the reason Tony was actually using it was to prove that you hear that song so much on the ride, and it's not a particularly quick ride either. You are on there for a little while, and you come out, and even though you might hate or dislike the song, you can't help but hear it on repeat through your head with the creepy little models and dolls at the same time. But we can use that strategy to fuel our transformation and help us achieve our goals along the way. So you use those affirmations, those incantations, and it's almost like you turn them into your own little small world song, but without it being creepy and freaky. And I just wanted to share that example with you because it did make me laugh, because sometimes you always think you're the only person that doesn't like something, or, you know, where it was quite validating to hear this huge, amazing, world-renowned figure of Tony Robbins saying, you know, that it is an earworm, and not necessarily in a good way. So I thought I'd just share that little story with you. Tony also went through a relationship segment on day 2, and it's really all about how we communicate, whether that be in romantic relationships, friendships, at work, you know, as business owners. And it was, I've done a lot of courses around communication, but I really like Tony's approach to it. It's very simple. Tony loves to keep things simple, because if they're simple, it's more likely that people will implement them and take it away with them. If it's too complicated, it goes into the too hard basket. So Tony, whenever you notice that there's conflict, or you're trying to discuss a particular problem in your relationship, whatever that relationship is, you go through, and instead of playing the blame game, you made me feel, or you make me feel, because nobody can make you feel a certain way. They are behaving in a way that triggers you, normally based on previous experiences, quite often not even with that person. But we play the blame game, which then gets us into this argument and defensive state. Both of us end up like that. So what Tony says is, instead of saying you make me feel, you explain what sensations are going on in your body. So it may be that I feel really tight on my chest around my heart. It could be that sicky tummy you get in your feeling. It could be a stabbing pain in your head, your back, whatever it is, a tingling sensation in your hands. You talk about the sensations that you have, and you try to be as specific as you can, not just saying, oh, my heart hurts or my chest hurts. Try and really break it down to exactly what that sensation is, because none of us are mind readers. So the person that you're having this conversation with, they don't know how you're physically feeling. And it's a really, really great way to communicate without creating an argument, because that's only going to head down a very unproductive route. Then Tony moves into what emotions are you feeling, and he really breaks this down. You know, you see all these emotion wheels, and there's so many things on them, but it's almost like there's the umbrella emotions, and then there's lots of emotions sort of sitting under each of those. I'll see if I can remember all of these off the top of my head, but there's sad, angry, fear, or being scared, and then you have sort of that glad feeling that you're happy, and then also excitement, that you're buzzing about something, and this can include that sort of sexual arousal as well. So Tony suggests that after the physical sensations that you're sharing, you then go through the emotions. Now, I saw him work with a couple to give a good example, and he coached both of them through this process. So the person that is listening is also prompting, drawing more information. If I was to say, I'm feeling scared of abandonment, I'm scared if I tell you something, you might leave me. And then the other person will be, is that the only emotion you're feeling? Is there anything else? And the couple that Tony was working with, they ended up covering all 5 of the emotions, whereas initially they maybe said 1 or 2. But obviously that's going to depend on the situation, and they had actually already done quite a bit of work together, so they were also feeling glad and excited about the new communication skills they'd learned and the fact that they had shared something that was causing issues in their relationship. So sharing the emotions that you are going through after the physical sensations, because again, we don't know what is going on in somebody else's mind and how they're feeling. And then finally was very simple: what do you want? What is it that you want from the other person? What is it that you want from yourself? Actually communicating that is something we forget to do. We expect, I know I do it with my husband all the time, I expect him to know what it is that I want, even though I don't always know what I want. We are pretty crap, I think. I know I definitely am at communicating clearly and efficiently, and it can really impact all of your relationships, whether that be at home or at work. It's really important that we do build these skills, and it's something that we can use with our children as well, which I wish I had known many moons ago, because my kids are a bit older now, but I can still implement it now and hope that they can take that into their own lives. Tony did make me laugh because he was saying how, as a rule, guys will quite often want to jump in and problem solve, although I feel like I'm a bit like that too. And that's why explaining the sensations that are going on in your body, telling them what the emotions are, it can help your partner, whether that be male or female, stop jumping in. You're not asking for help. You are explaining what is going on for you in that moment. But as the person listening, we need to be really mindful of that as well, not swooping in. And I'm so guilty of that, particularly with my children, trying to resolve everything. I'm a fixer, and I pride myself on it. But quite often it means that I don't always validate the other person, and they don't want the magic wand. They simply want to share what's going on for them at the moment and maybe come to some sort of resolution, but in their own way with your support, rather than you saying, this is what you need to do, or this is what I'm going to do to fix it for you. And then again, he made me laugh, saying that women quite often don't even know how they're feeling until somebody asks them. We know we might be feeling off. How many times have you said that? I just feel a bit off today, but you can't quite pinpoint what that off is. We're just off. So whereas when somebody asks you and they're genuinely interested, you start thinking about it a bit more and think, oh, actually, I've been worrying about this situation, and that's caused me to, feel quite nauseous because I'm anxious about making that decision. And then we start to go, oh, and that's that whole, problem shared is a problem halved, because quite often we don't even know what the problem is to work through, to step into and move through it. By talking up and sharing, we can start that process and, do that learning and that growing, which comes out of problems. And that leads me on to the final thing I'm going to share with you, is so many of us think that, the perfect life would involve no problems. But the problems, even the awful ones, is where we learn and grow. And we can do that in the most awful and dire of situations. And that's not to take anything away from the trauma, the loss that we may experience. But we can't change those things. They will have happened. We have no control over loss to a certain, generally speaking. And but we can choose to take away some form of growth or learning. Sometimes it's learning a bit more about yourself and how you dealt with that situation. Sometimes it's learning what you don't want, and that's where the change happens. That's where you think, I don't want to live like this anymore. I need to change. I want to feel more fulfilled. I want to experience more joy. And, don't be scared of problems. It's, whether big or small, they are there for a reason. And quite often, the more flow you get into with your life and you start embracing it more, the more problems will come at you, but you get better at problem solving. And it builds that resilience, it builds your knowledge, it helps you learn and develop. So Tony used a quote from somebody, and I'm so bad at remembering names, but part of the quote was, the only people that don't have any problems are in a grave. But the rest of the quote is that we should be worried if we don't have any problems, because doesn't that mean we're living a really sheltered, safe life? And I know for some of us that is what we crave and desire, is that safety and security. However, that can quite often be at the cost of living a fulfilling life. We might be sheltered and contained and safe, but that often results in us feeling as though something is missing from our lives. And this is where that journey begins to find your purpose, maybe, or transform your life so that you can love yourself, so that you can be confident and empowered and really choose how you travel through the journey. I would strongly recommend attending the summit, the Time to Rise Summit, when and if Tony runs it again. I'm pretty sure he will. It was an amazing experience. I did upgrade to the VIP so that I have constant lifetime access to the replays. They're always at slightly crazy times depending on your time zone. But yeah, it's transformational. He's got such an amazing energy. You can't help but get sucked into it, and you realize that really you are the master of your own universe and your destiny. We can't control everything, but we can control how we travel through. So yeah, if you get the opportunity to work with Tony at any stage in any of his courses or summits, I would definitely recommend doing it.